and Hegel is very clearly here. This is the role of so-called great historical personalities, heroes who are at the same time criminals in the sense of outside the law. And the way Hegel is usually read is that, yes, you as a hero follow your arrogant instincts, like of course Caesar wanted power. But you are following the line of what Hegel calls cunning of reason. You are an unconscious tool of a historical reason. You think you are following your narrow motives, egotism and so on, but in reality you are just an instrument of the higher rationality, reasoning, history, and so on and so on. I don't think it works as such. It works like this in Hegel. I think we should here take into account what I already said and rather see the process as much more open. When a certain historical forum is falling apart, there is a moment of genuine contingency, and then the hero does something, and if he is lucky, you have here following what in his wonderful text, you should read him, he's not an idiot, the guy who died, the British philosopher Bernard Williams. You know what he calls moral luck. This is a deeply Hegelian idea. The idea that even in morality, you cannot in advance measure the ethical status of an act by the purity of intention, whatever, that it depends on the very ethical status of an act, depends on how it turns, and so on and so on. So again, Hegel's idea is rather that something which is a contingency may, through a repetition, then establish itself as necessity. The example here would have been precisely Caesar. You know, Hegel uses this nice paradox that Caesar is at the same time the name of an individual, and then it became a title. That's for Hegel the function of repetition. First you do it, you fail, but you return as universality. In order for a thing to assert itself as necessity, it has to repeat itself. Again, first you have a person, Caesar, then it's repeated as a title. And in a wonderfully funny way, Hegel goes through history giving other examples of how Napoleon also had to lose twice. First in 1813, then in 1850. No? So that his loss was a necessity. So now let's go on. What does Hegel means by this retrospective character of the meaning of our acts? That's, again, now I will do a little bit of Antigone, because that's Hegel's basic insight, that Hegel is not an intentionalist. His position is extremely interesting here, very modern if you want. Hegel's point is not you do something that, you know, all this game of intentions, you intend to do something that, for Hegel, the meaning of an act arises only through the act itself. For Hegel, the rule is rather that you intend to do something, and it's only through the meaning, through the act itself, that you discover retroactively what you really meant to do. Meaning is not pre-existing. Hegel is not here, in this sense, an internalist. Hegel is totally opposed to this false hermeneutic idea of what do I know, what did you mean with that? I would have to know your mind to know what did you mean it. No, for Hegel, you yourself don't know what you meant. You wanted something, but it's through the act that it becomes retroactively clear to you what you meant. And again, in a radical reading of Hegel, I claim this doesn't mean that somebody else does know. That you know, that you are just a tool. You think you are doing A, but some divine intelligence, reasoning history controls it. No, it's contingency. Reason of it's history is, as Hegel would, as Gould, Stephen Jay Gould, the Marxist Darwinian, would have put it, one big process of acceptation. Hegel, I think, is the arch theories of acceptation. You do something meant for a certain goal, it's accepted, but in an improvised, open way. I will try to prove this to you now by taking the big example from phenomenology, Antigone. It is so elementary that I didn't want you to give you the literature, but if you want, tomorrow I can give you some parts of Hegel which are worth reading. I prefer this arrogant way. Not you read Hegel, then you interpret me. I tell you what to look in Hegel, then you read Hegel. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so for Hegel, what is crucial, as you maybe know, is the passage from tragedy to comedy. Comedy is for Hegel the truth of tragedy. He doesn't mean the usual thing that tragedy is not serious. The way Hegel is interpreted here is again in a false pseudo-dialectical way. People usually think like this. Once you are caught into the action, you participate, it's tragic, it's the real struggle. But then, from the position of the universal idea, you see how all these struggles are just moments in a global unity, so this is wisdom. How, we fight our struggles, but you know, all these ridiculously stupid proverbs like, aren't we only elements in some higher theater piece written by God, we don't even know what, and so on and so on. I hate proverbs. I think proverbs are the stupidity of language embodied. What are proverbs? Whatever you do, you always find a proverb to justify it, I claim. Let's say I'm doing something which is a little bit risky. I succeed. What will be your reaction if you are stupid? I'm not saying you are. Probably you will tell something like, I don't know, in Slovenia we have proverbs like, only those who risk profit or whatever, like proverbs justifying the necessity of taking a risk. Let us say that I fail. Oh, you will have a gain. I don't know, we in Balkan, it is in Slovenia, we have a nice proverb, this skeptical. It says something like, you cannot urinate against the wind, you know. Yeah. And incidentally, if you talk about slips of tongue which produce obscene effects, this is my favorite ultimate obscenity. Once I made this point in Paris at a seminar by Jacques-Alain Miller, and I wanted to make this point again, and I wanted to translate, of course it was in French, into French, this, you cannot piss, urinate against the wind. I confused the French words, and I confused shit, instead of on ne peut pisser, I said on ne peut chier. You cannot cheat contre le vent. And Miller was scared. He just looked coldly at me and said, the wind must be really strong in your country. I know, these were nice moments of my experience there. No? Okay, but let's go on. So, it's not this position of wisdom that Hegel means by the passage from tragedy to comedy. He means something else. What he wants to illustrate, apropos Antigone, is again precisely this retrospectivity of the true meaning of our acts. You do something, retrospectively you discover, but for Hegel this discovery is constitutive. You get my point. It's not that some higher intelligence knew from the very beginning. No, there is no reasoning history in this sense. Reason is always retroactive. You can tell a story, but only afterwards. Okay, what's Hegel's point of Antigone? Antigone, for Hegel, deploys what happens when a subject acts upon the premises of some, what Hegel calls ethics of immediate substantial custom. What the idea is that, you know how Antigone acts confronting Creon. It's not a reflective acting. It's not the idea. Her point is not to argue in this typical modern way conflicting ethical claims. He simply does it because it's in